I'm sure we had a number of people frustrated with trying to watch it, but now we're back with Dean. I think we are. Dean, are you there?
I believe I am. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay. Let me figure out what's up with that.
Okay. Anyway, I'll just ramble some more while you're figuring out what's up with that. First of all, we weren't going to do this additional hangout to do an analysis of the interview, but I did want to ask you briefly if you had any thoughts watching it, or were you able to watch it?
I was able to watch it just fine, and I see myself on camera. I don't know if anybody else can. Oh my God!
Now we see you. Okay.
He needs to wash his hair. I really enjoyed watching that. I was fascinated because I had watched Daddy I Do before ever talking to Cassie, and I was impressed with how she managed to get through an extremely emotional issue for some people and not inject her personal opinions into it at all, and not even slant it one way or the other, although I came away very firmly of the conclusion that the abstinence-only movement probably doesn't work. It was pretty clear to me she wasn't trying to spin me to come to that conclusion. And
that was just the facts speaking to you, or at least as you said.
It was just the facts speaking to me. And the people, and the fact of the matter is, I actually walked away liking the abstinence-only people a little more, because I had spent many years that regardless of my religious and whatever beliefs are, these people were advising something really stupid for reason. I could go into a whole long list of reasons why, but the bottom line is I thought they were just dumb. But they came across as very human and very likable. And so, or virtually every single abstinence-only person came across well in that film. I didn't think anybody came across badly in her film, which I think is a remarkable achievement for a documentarian.
It's pretty tough. I don't think I could or probably would do it. I'm probably too biased in my point of view to be a decent documentarian.
Well, plus you're just a bad, evil man in general, so.
As well, yeah. There's always that. I mean, we don't even need to say it. Here's what I'm thinking. You know, the reason that I wanted to do this discussion with you after the interview with Cassie was because I observed a lot of things, and it's nothing new. But in particular, leading up to when I made the announcement about this movie and when I saw comments on it on Facebook, on our site, and on other places, we have a contingent in the men's community that is sort of, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but it's sort of like, watch out, the sky's going to fall in contingent. Somebody might say bad things about you. And I wanted to have a discussion for a few minutes a little bit on the nature of social movements, of how they happen, and the fact that this is a part of the process, that it's not like that with American civil rights that a bunch of African Americans got together and said, hey, our rights are being violated, and then all of a sudden white America said, oh yeah, okay, but boy, that's really true, well, so let's just fix it up. The idea that any social movement has ever made progress without there being conflict, without there being condemnation. There were other black people that were just outraged at the beginnings of the civil rights movement and who wanted nothing to do with it. It was the same thing with feminism, the same thing with gay rights, the same thing with any kind of movement I can think of. There's always an initial reaction from society to condemn it, to put it down, to make fun of the people that participate. First they ignore you, then they make fun of you, then they fight you, and then you win. And we are reaching the fighting stage of this battle, and of course we get mostly negative press. That's why we need to have a movement. It's because of these entrenched ideas. So I just wanted to talk a little bit and get your ideas too about what do we do with this contingent in the men's movement that somehow thinks that our success is measured on getting people to say things nice about us and getting people to write good things and to make good movies that speaks our point of view. And I'm saying this about a lot of people that I respect. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but it seems to me a sort of not looking at history the way all social movements have developed and taking that into account when analyzing what's going on now.
Some people get immediately angry when you start comparing to any other civil rights movement, which is a little frustrating because it's like, well, they're saying, you know, if you make a comparison, for example, to black civil rights, they'll say, well, you know what, you're saying you have it as bad as people with segregated lunch counters. They want to go there. If you mention Jews in Germany, oh, you're saying that you're just as bad off as that. If you mention almost any other movement, people seem to think we're saying, well, it's exactly the same for us. And, well, no, it's not, because if you look at any of those social movements, none of those were exactly identical either. All you're doing is drawing parallels. And when looked at from that context, I actually think what may be the most relevant movement to compare us to, if anything, is the gay rights movement. Maybe just because it's more modern, but it is more contentious. It does. Homosexuality hits buttons in people in ways that others don't. You know, and so let's look at the gay rights movement. The epochal moment of that was is generally agreed to be something called Stonewall, where a bunch of gay men. And by the way, mostly men. Almost entirely men, got tired of police raids coming into gay bars and arresting everybody for being gay, and pretty much rioted over the thing. And then so there was Stonewall, and then as everybody knows, gay rights just broke out everywhere, and it was all over, right? No, it didn't. Apartheid in South Africa. Is our situation as bad? No, that's not the point. The point is apartheid in South Africa. Was the movement to end apartheid? How did it go? 40 years of apartheid, then Nelson Mandela walks out of prison, and it's over. Is that how that went? No. It's how it looks like in the history books. Even if you look at something really big like the fall of the Soviet Union, never mind current events in the news. Look, if you look at the fall of the Soviet Union, if you're young enough or you're just not thinking hard enough, you think what happened is one day there was a Soviet Union, then the Berlin Wall came down, and it was over, democracy in Russia. Did that happen that way, actually?
Actually, no.
No. No. It's still playing out, in fact. Martin Luther King gives the I Give a Dream speech in 1963. Epochal moment in human history. In 1968, 5 years later, there's race riots still. Actually, the first big race riots, I think. But in any case, I think within the men's rights community, we have, I say this with love, I think we have our egos who think none of this will ever change. And that's maybe where some of the more hardcore, what I would call the hardcore MGTOWs, men going their own way, come from. None of this can change. It's all biological determinism. It really can't change. People won't change. Men won't change. Women won't change. To which I say no, and I don't have to choose either social constructivism or rabid genetic reductionism.
Well, the part of that really bothers me sometimes is that, one, if this were solely biological determinism and everybody was cast into a role that they could not break out of, we couldn't have men going their own way. That phenomena could not exist. Now, is it different? Yes. The fact of the matter is that this is the first movement that really does challenge gender roles. This is the first movement that really does go against a lot of human drives, and it makes it tougher for that reason. There's no doubt it's harder. So I looked at it from an understanding of counterculture, and I think that is a critical part of understanding what's happening here. There is not going to be a Men's Rights Day parade in Washington, D.C., with 200,000 people on the green, and a Men's Rights Act passed in Congress, and all these things that we normally consider iconic of civil rights movements. What there can be, though, is a counterculture, and there already is one. MGTOW is a counterculture. The MRAs are a counterculture, both men and women. They are people that have taken the red pill, changed their perspective, whatever you want to call it, but they are forming a sub-community that is growing, just like we saw with the Romantics, like we saw with the Bohemians, like we saw with the Beatniks, like we saw with the hippies. You can call hippies whatever you want. You can't say they didn't change the culture.
The hip-hop movement.
Yes.
Like it or hate it.
All of these things have a tremendous impact on the culture at large. That's how you change a culture, is with countercultures. It's the only way that cultures change, and that's what's happening right now. So does it matter if Cassie J is a evil sneak that set out to undermine the men's movement and make this movie to make us all look bad? No, if she did that, it might even help us more than hurt us. I don't think that's going to happen. I think what you got from her today was what's going to happen in the movie. I could be wrong. Who knows? Nobody knows for sure. But in the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is that more and more people start looking at this stuff and challenging their own ideas, and that's already happening. But we're not going to get there by worrying every time a journalist writes something that's nasty. Just spell the URL correctly. Spell my name right. Get it out there. Get more people to the site. Get more people to the MGTOW forums. Give more people a way to look. Those comments out there on the internet actually change things for the better. And the comments now look tremendously different than they did even 2 years ago. Any article out there that comes out that's pro-feminist, none of it's going unchallenged anymore. They have to delete it in order to keep their forum clean. But I wanted to talk about this because I just wanted to reiterate the idea and maybe try to infuse more of this in the discussion, that we are not here to make friends with the mainstream. We're not here to one day wake up and have every legislator in every state suddenly talking about our issues. Eventually that will happen. It will become a part of the culture. But the way we get there is the way we've been going, which is to talk about this stuff unapologetically and to have other people like Cafe, do great work. And they don't take the same track we do. But I remember as a kid watching the Olympics and seeing a runner, I forget his name, but he got a gold medal. And instead of putting his hand over his heart when they played the national anthem, he raised a black fist.
Right.
Black power. And that was needed at the time. That was a part of that counterculture, that movement that eventually brought real change to society. And I raised mine too.
I'll tell you, I can't emphasize this point enough. I've met a number of people within the men's movement and some outside of it who say, well, I've met people like, okay, I'll just say it, mostly MGTOWs, also some PUAs, who think that what men's rights activists do is we go out and we primarily lobby government officials and try and get new laws passed, sign petitions. Well, we do a little of those things, but the fact of the matter is what we mostly do is engage in counterculture, exactly like you just mentioned, Paul, because I'll tell you, all right, I just mentioned, for example, the civil rights movement in the 1960s. I don't think this point can be missed. After the Civil War and the end of slavery, black people were denied all sorts of basic fundamental rights for about 100 years, almost to the day. In 1964, President Lyndon Johnson staked his entire presidency on getting something called the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed, which, there may be some little things to criticize within it, overall was the legislation that said, bang, no more. There will be no more discrimination in the United States. It was followed within 1 year with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which guaranteed the vote to everybody no matter what, if they were of age. It didn't matter. No more literacy tests, no more of that bullshit, counting the number of jelly beans in a jar. No, everybody gets a vote. So, civil rights are now established in America? Not really. 3 years later, we saw riots. 3 years later, we saw, well, I believe it was the '68 Olympics, but I can't remember what year that was, where that guy was raising his fist in Black Power and whatever. And we saw all sorts of civil unrest through the early 1970s around race issues, and we still haven't fully resolved race issues, although I think you'd be a fool not to think that they're orders of magnitude better today than they were 50 years ago. Similarly here, we can see all the legal changes we want. For example, we've seen this new movie, Divorce Corp, that Joe, I can't remember what his name is. Anyway, the movie Divorce Corp, the director of Divorce Corp, is trying to get a movement together to change laws on child custody and divorce in the United States. Those may pass. This will not necessarily mean everything gets better overnight, because A, there'll be a lot of remaining issues, and B, the courts have historically found ways to get back to doing things business as usual, regardless of what the legislation says. So I believe in my heart, anybody who isn't in this and thinking, oh, that short term means 10 years and that long term may mean 100 is not thinking straight. And if you don't have that level of patience, you need to get it. And this is one of the reasons why I, for example, have always considered the MGTOW, even the ones who say, I'm not a men's rights activist, they're full of shit, they're wasting their time. It's why I've always believed every MGTOW, whether he wants to admit it or not, is a form of men's rights activist. Because just the act of saying, I'm not playing this game anymore, is an act of disobedience to the wider culture. And becomes something that we, as men's rights activists, can point to, and you say, you see those guys? Now you can keep calling them losers and whiners and whatever you want, but guess what? There's more and more of them all the time. Do you think you might want to stop and question your own assumptions as to why those guys see things this way?
Dean, that's why no matter how much flack that we get from some of the more extreme MGTOWs out there, the isolationists that point at MRIs and say we're a bunch of manginas or whatever we get, we're always going to support the MGTOW community and the idea of men going their own way. We're absolutely going to be behind that with every resource we can and every way we can, publishing literature on that, because the best solution that this culture has is showing men one at a time that they don't have to buy this bullshit corporate lie, marriage lie, everything else that's going on out here that really just sort of grabs men when they're born and raises them to be useful and disposable, that they don't have to participate in that. And the worse that feminist governance makes things for men, the more that philosophy is attractive to them. We're not really building the MGTOW movement. Feminism is, and certain aspects of traditionalism is building the MGTOW movement. Certainly running around, I know Dean and I disagree on this, or we might, but running around using guys on battlefields to go kill and die for corporate interests is not a really great alternative for men. Doesn't work out so good in the long run. I've been in the VA hospital enough and seen enough of the results to know how good that is for men in the end. But they've never felt like there's been an option. Men have felt like that, there's the military traditional route, whatever, there is go the feminist route. But there really wasn't many options, and now there finally is one. There's an alternative for men to say, you know something, I don't have to do any of this stuff. I can make my own way. I don't have to try to climb the corporate ladder and become a success in the eyes of other men. I don't have to run around dedicating my life to pleasing women. I can do what I want to do, and they're actually starting to take up on it despite the biological determinism that's preached by some of them.
That's right. Men are opting out of marriage and commitment all over the world, not just in the United States, Canada, and etc. They're opting out all over the world, and a lot of them don't know why they are, but the more we spread a message, the more of them will start to think, yes, this is why. I'd never thought about it before, but yeah. And more men, I believe, will start asking the hard question of, oh, you want a relationship and to make a baby with me? Well, I might like to make a baby, but why would I do that? And what is in it for me? And that's just such a shocking question to normal ears in this culture, but that can change. There's a lot of things that can change, but I don't believe any effective political change will happen without cultural change first. And this is why what you're saying about counterculture is absolutely correct, and why it's not going to change overnight. In fact, I have a theory, a rather radical theory, so somebody can check me on this. Google up something sometime called preference falsification, which is a psychosocial theory as to why there are sometimes very sudden social changes when people didn't think they were going to change at all. I'm actually pretty much of the opinion that we might be about, in shorter time than people believe, feminism might get a stink on it faster than people think it does.
I think it's already happening.
I think it may even fall as an ideology, and here's where I get in trouble with some of my friends in the movement. If feminism falls as an ideology and nobody takes it seriously anymore, we actually have a bigger problem to face waiting on the other end anyway, which is all the things that Warren talks about, all the things that Tom Golden talks about, most of the things that you just talked about. Fine, the vilification of men ends. Does the end of using men as disposable utilities come with that? Does the end of men seeking their identity through the approval of women end from that? Does the social expectation, oh, well, feminism's dead, therefore it's your job to be the provider. And by the way, never hit a woman. I was taught that from a very early age in an anti-feminist household. Feminism is not the only problem. Feminism is gynocentrism on steroids. So even if we suddenly see the women's studies department start shutting down one after the other, and more women, which by the way we're seeing all the time, more and more women show up and say, I'm not a feminist, this is bullshit, I don't want anything to do with this. The more, I mean, feminism could evaporate and become a minor ideology that nobody takes serious anymore, or that they actually loathe, like the white supremacist movement, and still the underlying problems will be there, which is why, once again, the movement has to be about creating a counterculture and getting men to stop thinking of themselves in terms first and foremost of what women or society expect of them, but start seeing themselves first and foremost as human beings, then as male human beings second, and pondering what that means. But you are not a disposable utility. Even if you do choose to do something heroic, I don't even know if I want to put that in scare quotes, something heroic, like be a fireman, or go ahead and join the military because you don't quite share Paul's view that all of our wars are for corporations. You've chosen that because you chose it, because you made the thought process that, no, this is what I want to do. I believe in that conflict over there, or I believe I want to fight fires, or I believe I want to be a cop and I want to save people, or whatever it is. But you didn't do it because, well, this is what's going to make me a man. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to remember that as we see more and more women now, we're seeing more and more women all the time say, I'm not a feminist, I hate feminists. Fill in the rest of that sentence, guys. It's, I'm not a feminist, I want a man to take care of me.
Quite
That's
frequently.
What you're hearing from most of these women. Not, where they say, well, I was talking to somebody the other day and I heard a new one. Ewalt. Enough women are like that.
I like that one myself.
So do I, and I think it's really important to remember that we're not just fighting feminism here. We're not just trying to overturn discrimination in family courts. Dean is absolutely right. When feminism falls, and it will, because it's a sick, corrupt ideology that can't stand the pressure of any weight on it. It's a house of cards that will eventually buckle, and we think we're seeing that to start happen now. But when it does, I can promise you a resurgence of male utility-oriented traditionalism is going to rush in and claim victory. All I'm saying is don't let it claim you at the same time, because if you do, if that's your agenda, then we're right back at square one to gynocentrism. And personally, I don't want to be there. Dean, you got anything else before we close?
Well, you did just mention gynocentrism. I'm going to mention Peter Wright's awesome site, gynocentrism.com, which goes into the historical roots of a lot of this stuff. A lot of the stuff feminism secretly is based on that they don't even recognize. And why you don't have to believe all this shit is just embedded in our genes and unchangeable. Gynocentrism.com is awesome. Also, go to MGTOW.avoiceformen.com, where Peter Wright is doing some stellar work, bringing forward men going their own way material. Know that we have your full support. We have you guys. All MGTOW have our full support in what they're doing to define themselves in their own lives. And competing sites. We welcome competing sites. We need as many voices as possible, including voices who don't like us. More power to it. And I'll end with that. I do worry a little that Cassie's actually going to get more pushback against feminists than, I mean, she's got people telling her she shouldn't make this movie. It should be interesting. We've seen people like Aaron Pitsey actually have their writing careers destroyed because they were saying things that the feminist establishment didn't like. I'm hoping that doesn't happen to Cassie. But I'll tell you right now, honest to God, if I walk out of that movie and feel like we just got savaged, that she just made us look like Nazis, Stalinists, I won't care, because I know it will make people curious, and thinking people will show up, and they'll continue to show up. And you know why? We may not be perfect, we may not be right about everything, but I believe we are on the right side of history. We are on the right side of civil rights. We are on the right side of human rights. And on the whole, we are anyway. And nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. That's what I think.
People attacking us has been pretty good to us so far.
That's right.
That's how we've gotten most of our growth. I want to mention a couple other things. Oh, and I do. That can't be your final word because I want to get your opinion on something. One, before I get to that, I want to apologize to everybody. We had enormous technical problems. We ended up having to not do this on my YouTube channel. What we're going to do as quickly as we can is we're going to download this. We're going to chop it in half and let the Cassie J interview stand on its own because this discussion was really not about that so much. It was about other things. But it should be up soon. Sorry about the problems. The other thing, Dean, the organization RAINN, R-A-I-N-N, Rape and Incest, something other. They're the largest anti-sexual abuse organization in the United States, probably in the world, has issued a report to the White House saying that rape culture is essentially bullshit and calling on the White House to change its guidelines for how universities treat rape, to take the focus off these internal tribunals that young men are being tried at, and to involve the criminal justice system in allegations of rape, God forbid, and of all things, to start teaching potential rape victims how to take precautions so that they don't get themselves raped. I mean, this is, I think, the biggest blow because the heart and soul of feminism right now is rape culture. They just thrive on it. Everything is rape culture to them. I said rape, so I'm a part of rape culture. But this is really big news, isn't it? That this humongous organization with connections in the White House has all of a sudden just issued this big report, and all of it seems focused on the idea of debunking the rape culture myth.
Well, let's. All right. RAINN is still pretty clearly a gynocentric, feminist-influenced organization. They aren't quite where they ought to be yet. Nevertheless, I would say I would compare it potentially. I mean, nothing's going to change this current administration on this.
Right.
No question. Nothing's going to change this current administration. But this is like the Berlin Wall coming down. I mean, you should have seen the Twitter storm amongst feminists like Jessica Valenti and others when RAINN did this. She even had one idiot tweet saying, "I don't understand why RAINN is being dismissive of the feminist perspective." I had to stop myself from responding because your perspective is hateful, bigoted bullshit with no scientific basis. because that's the truth. I didn't. I figured leave poor Jessica alone. Her life is going to get more miserable as time goes on, as her ideology gets challenged anyway. And even when I say compare it to the Berlin Wall crumbling down, you ever talk to anybody who was in Berlin or East Germany after the Berlin Wall came down? It took them a good solid 10 years to for things to get sorted out. Nothing happens overnight, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal. The rape culture notion, I'll tell you, people don't like me saying this, but the real rape culture that we live under is the one that laughs at the rape of men and can't even conceive of a woman using her vagina to abuse a man in any way sexually. And that's the real rape culture.
And the rape culture that's in our prisons.
And in our prisons and in our juvenile society. But I'll never make rape culture my byline for anything. I want all human beings to be helped when they need it. And if that's what winds up being 2/3 women and 1/3 men, fine. If it winds up being half men, half women, fine. I don't care. We need to stop with the ideology bullshit. And RAINN just made a big step, not a complete step, but a big step toward that. And that's the sort of thing I expect to keep seeing happening over the next 20 years. And I really expect to see 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Nothing like this happens overnight, guys. And if you think it is, no, don't get disgusted. Do your best to make life as best as it can be for you right now, and hopefully, if you have the energy, help a little bit to make the future a better place. That's all I got. I'm really looking forward to Cassie's movie, good, bad, or either, or somewhere in between. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, me too. Just want to say one more thing about the RAINN report. Not that I would put evil ideas in anybody's mind, far be it from me to do something like that.
Yep.
But I do want to say that as somebody that has, dealt with seeing most times that I've seen ABFM mentioned in the press in one way or another, there's always been some feminist idiot running in behind saying SPLC, SPLC, and of course saying that we're a hate group, which the SPLC never did, but they don't let that stop them. As a matter of fact, we have the sort of weird distinction of being the only group that the SPLC has declared not to be a hate group in public. So that's pretty cool. But I know for me that over the next couple of years especially, that every time I see the word rape culture, RAINN, and that's for me, folks. We'll have both these videos up on my channel before long. Thanks, everybody, for your patience, and let's keep building the foundation.
All right, guys. Carry on. Take the red pill.
You have to click us out, Dean.
Oh, I do, don't I? Bye.